and welcome to another episode of Hired to Lead, a podcast brought to you by Zerin, part of Renovata. I'm Kim Wardle, Director of Design and Innovation Search. Now, we go deeper than the headline role. We explore the journey behind the leader, the moments that shaped them, and the decisions that cost them, and the turning points that changed everything. At Zerin, we believe the best insights come from the people living it. Real-world conversations with world-class leaders and what it actually looks like to lead at the highest level. Now, there's something uniquely fascinating about a design leader who builds for other designers. Someone who has to hold the bar extremely high, because the people using the product every day are exactly the kind of people who will notice when something is off. And today's guest is one of them. And I'm delighted to be joined by Mark Boyce-Smith, Head of Design at Miro, the collaborative intelligence platform used by 100 million collaborators around the world to think, create, and build together. A product that has become part of how modern teams work, and one that sits right at the intersection of creativity, collaboration, and now AI. Hi, Mark.
Hello. I'm really glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining me. Now, what is really awesome is that, and we only just realised this, is that we're from the same hometown.
We are.
Which is brilliant, such a small world. So I want to know, before we get into the big themes, take us back. When you first started out, what was your journey and how did you get into design? And what was your journey before you even started leading design at a company like Miro?
Gosh, yeah. Okay, so we're going back quite a way now. I'm a child of the 90s. So back in Middlesbrough, when I was where we're both from, when I was growing up, maybe about 10-year-old, we started to get the internet in the houses. I don't know if you remember that, like dial-up internet was just coming in, and there was absolutely nothing you could do on the internet at that time. And so we would build websites. Like, I don't know, I always loved that kind of like world building. I was like the Lego kid. I would put all the sets together. And I loved that idea about building things. And me and my friends, we would build these tiny little websites on, it was like Max Pages and GeoCities and these amazing like old businesses that existed at the time.
Yeah.
We loved it. And it always stuck with me. I continued to do that throughout my childhood. Went into computer science and ended up doing a degree at York University in computer science, just basically becoming a software engineer. And when I came out, that's the first role I went into. But I realized really, really quickly that I was never going to make a professional software engineer. I was absolutely terrible at it. And I also realized in that moment that it wasn't actually the building of things that I loved. It was the outcome. It was almost like the showmanship of the thing that you could create that I thought was insanely exciting. And so very early on in my career, I had the opportunity to dabble a little bit in design. We were building things like websites at businesses I was working at, or very small kind of like early SaaS applications. And I loved like thinking about how you pull together that user interface on the top. And you take something that's like wildly complicated and you make it aesthetic and engaging and tactile. And it just continued to grow. I took on more and more design roles. Eventually things like design systems, where I sat on the fence between design and engineering, and then ended up running design at InVision. I was the VP of design there, which was a really fascinating time. Figma was just coming out. Everyone was moving away from InVision. We were pivoting our product. And then ultimately we're acquired by Miro, and that's how I ended up there as head of AI design.
Wow, what an incredible background. And I bet it
Long journey.
resonates so much more now that, AI is allowing designers to code. And actually you having that engineering background, it just means that you probably have a much better understanding when you're having to collaborate with the engineering team. I love that.
Do you know what was really interesting? Like, I think like as a builder, you always want to take your ideas and get them as far as possible. Like you always kind of have that drive. But as I stepped more into design and away from engineering, it became really difficult to do that. You obviously lose traction in the engineering community. You're trying to figure out like, how do you piece these things together? And then all of a sudden with AI, you feel capable again. Like all of a sudden you can take your ideas all the way through to the finish line in a way that you haven't been able to do before. And I thought that was incredibly exciting.
Yeah, I love that. So let's dive into Miro, because obviously it's a tool that designers reach for constantly. Workshops, ideation, research, synthesis. What's it like being head of design at a company where your users actually often include your own peers as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know what? I think it's a really nice opportunity. Oftentimes, earlier on in my career, I've worked with businesses where it's a little bit difficult. Maybe they're like verticalized businesses, and it can be difficult to get into the mindset of the problems that your customers have. And so you can build a great product, but it's very difficult to move beyond empathy into a space where you really feel acutely what those problems are. At Miro, we get the ability to do that every single day. We can dog food that product all day long because the challenge is that our designers face, not just designers, product owners, engineers, anybody who's building product, and then beyond as well, because we serve like many, many different types of teams across the world. We get to step into their shoes and talk about the problems they're facing because they're the exact same ones that we're facing internally. And it just gives you such a strong perspective on what comes next, but also it helps you can put an idea down and within 5 or 10 minutes, you can see how much traction it's going to give you. And is it solving a problem that we have? It's a great first start.
I can imagine. And I don't know about you, but I feel there's a lot of anxiety in the design community right now around AI. I know you see it differently though.
Yeah.
Why do you think this is one of the biggest opportunities in design that we've ever had rather than a threat?
Oh gosh. Okay. This is a big one. But I think from my perspective, we've spent a lot of time in design, making a science out of what is, a bit of an art form, to try and ensure that like the product folks around us, the engineering folks around us, the go-to-market folks recognize what value we bring. And in the early days, we had all of the conversations around like, hey, how do I get more resourcing for my designers? Like, oh, well, do you know what? We don't need design on this one. We're just going to run ahead with the ideas that we've got right now. And we spent a lot of time. There was a lot of early pioneers there helping to build up an understanding of why design is a really important thing to invest in. But I think right now, we're in a space where design has got a new lease of life. We get to be the glue that binds everyone together because many more people have ideas that they can now share with each other because they have technologies that allow them to bring it to a higher fidelity. And so I see our role in two ways, really. One of them is to be the creative canon for a business. Like, okay, you bring everybody closer together, you take their ideas, you show them how to bring it to life. That's a wonderfully like energizing opportunity for design that we haven't had before. And then also we get to be the stewards as well. So if many more people are in the creative space, but we still want to deliver something that's like super high quality and solves the actual acute problem that the users are facing, we get to build the foundations and the factory that make it really easy for everybody else to access those skills. So for me, I think the role of design has become more elevated. I think we've become more important, not less important. I certainly don't see us being replaced by, your Claude design or your Figma make. I think they're fantastic tools, but what we bring is like a degree of critical thinking and taste that continues to be important.
Yeah. And what about when speed and output are no longer the bottleneck? What becomes the
Yeah.
designer's unique value, and what do designers need to actively develop to own that space?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think like I'm talking like about the last 6 months. I'm not even talking about the last year or 2 years anymore.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, building things has become cheap. We talk about UI being cheap and throwaway now, where historically, the features you build, the capabilities you build have been incredibly expensive. You have to have a certain amount of gut conviction that it's the right thing before you go and write off $1 million to build the thing and get it out to customers or, whatever. Probably much more. Whereas now, because it's so cheap and we can build technically anything, we've got to be able to build the right thing. And so I think this is where design again becomes critically important. And the expectation we have, we talk a lot about the double diamond in product building and that idea of diverging and converging and the design thinking process at large. This idea that you can take an idea, but you need to split that out and fracture it into many different sub ideas before you bring it back together and you know the right thing you're going to build. Now we have the opportunity to diverge even more. So where previously we might have had 5 different concepts for a certain problem we're trying to solve, we can now have 10, we can have 15, we can have 20. and we can go much, much more broad, and we can bring more people into that conversation much earlier on. And I think that's a really fantastic thing that we've never been able to do before. But it does require us to converge and build stronger conviction than we have. We've got to be able to build the right thing and not get caught up in the excitement of prompting and then seeing a really great output and being like, oh my God, this is the solution. Let's run with it. So a lot of it is kind of holding back your energy and making sure that you are really investing in divergent concepts.
Yeah, definitely. And so forgetting the philosophy for a moment, what has actually changed in how your team works this week? Let's say this week, this month, because of AI, because it's changed at the speed of light, like you just touched on.
Yeah. So there's been a few things that have happened. I'll talk over the last maybe 3 months since I rejoined Miro. I think maybe 4 months or so. And the first thing is all designers now have access to our code base, our production code base. And this is something that we're seeing across many, many different businesses right now. But it's a critically important leap where, from an engineering perspective, you have the security and the confidence that if you let a designer in, there's a safety net there. There's a way for them to build with confidence and at the quality level that all of our customers expect. So that's a huge leap. The second thing is like making designers feel confident. We're not known as a specialism for having deep technical skills. Typically, a lot of people come into design from the creative arts, from branding, from graphic design, those sorts of backgrounds. And so this is an entirely new skill set that we're building up. And so I've seen a raft of different brown bag sessions or like tutorials on how to build with code. And that's been fantastic because I've seen it cascade from the people who have tons of background and experience in engineering, like myself, all the way down to somebody who has never opened up Visual Studio, has never typed a line of code, has never used an agent as part of a terminal window. And we've seen everybody kind of engage across that stack. And then I think the final thing that I've seen is, all of our prototyping, and I literally mean all of it, 100% of it is shifted into code-based prototypes. I didn't think it would happen that quickly. It's been amazing to see. And so what we've seen in our teams is the little like engineering designy geeks like me have kind of come out the woodwork, and we've built different solutions. I've got a fantastic designer on my team at the moment who has built a platform we call Vibe Labs. And it's a space where designers can easily upload and share their prototypes, and they're immediately hosted. And then they can remix each other's prototypes. They can comment on them. They can feedback and collaborate. It's wonderful. And that's been a huge change because it means that we can move much, much quicker at building out design ideas. The only thing is, what does that mean for Figma?
Yeah.
And I think our Figma usage has, I love Figma, by the way. I think it's a wonderful design tool. But our Figma usage has fallen off a cliff. We're now using it to take a prototype out through MCP and then do fine like scalpel cuts where we want to have absolute precision on the output. That's when we're using Figma. So the whole thing has changed. The entire way that we design has shifted.
Wow. And I love all your positivity. And I think for a designer right now, it just means they're just going to be stretched and learning new skills. But what I'd love to know as well, though, because there's got to be a few problems in there. And where are you seeing it create new fictions or new problems that you weren't expecting?
Yeah. Okay. So there's a few, definitely. I think the first one, we talked about that idea of skill set and building it up. Engineers will study for, just like design, it's a practice. Engineers will be there for years and years and years honing that craft. It's incredibly complex and it's not replaced overnight by Claude or something like that. You have to know the questions to ask or the prompts to make. So you almost have to know the structure of like, how does code work? How does all of that like technical side work? And so I see there being a very long on-ramp for anybody coming into that space, designers in particular, who are having to think like, okay, this is the way that I visualize the problem, but actually I need to now pivot that almost like 90 degrees and look at how it's actually built from an engineering perspective. And that's not easy. So the issue there is like, how do you create the time for these people to do that? Because, we're all seeing this in our businesses. The expectation is we are very AI forward. We want to use AI to solve as many of our solutions as possible so that we can give our teams the time back to think and then get to that kind of impact as soon as possible. But if they're also having to build those skills, how do you balance that? How do you make sure you're making progress and also giving people the space to learn something new, which is not, it's not trivial. So that's been a really big challenging area. But there's another one, and that's around collaboration. I think more and more as we work closer with our Claude or our Chat GPT, whatever your, you know, your agent of choice is, we've all got one nowadays. Um, he, we do more of that personal work with that agent before we bring it back to the broader team, right? So all of that rich thinking, all of the ideas that you kind of littered the floor with that you never took back to anybody, they're held between you and your chat and never shared with anyone. And we're seeing that as a massive collaboration issue that, funnily enough, Miro is actually trying to solve. We recognize that, hey, we have to find a way to bring you and your agents together so that your team can have like a very thorough and deep conversation as early on as possible. And so that's a challenge for design in particular.
Yeah. And obviously leading a team through this shift is a different challenge to navigate for yourself.
Yeah.
What would you say now great design leadership looks like in an era of AI?
Wow. Okay. I can give my perspective. I think there's probably some really good takes out there. My personal flavor of this would be, I think first of all, you have to lead with a degree of enthusiasm. We're in a difficult time right now. I don't think there's any point kind of covering over that. People have a lot of emotions and feelings about the world that we're entering into and the world that we're moving out from. And I think the first thing is you have to make sure that you're bringing some of that energy and excitement about what we could do as a team into this. And so that, you know, that as part of that, it's like helping give people the space to learn those new skills, as I talked about, but also coaching them around like, what does this mean for your personal skill set and how it develops? I think we've all gone through that existential crisis, especially in design, where you're like, okay, everyone's talking about design being dead or something being dead, but the reality is my job needs to continue to go. I need to continue to put food on the table, you know. So how do I evolve my skill set with everything that I've learned so far to still be relevant in a world where AI is a starting point? So I think that's part of it, like being enthusiastic and looking for the opportunities. But the other side of it, I think, is painting a picture of where design is important. I mean, I spoke about that idea of us being the glue. I think that's critically important to communicate to people. You know, there's so many more opportunities out there for us right now. We've probably never been quite so it had the potential to be quite so impactful, and I'm really excited about that. But yeah, for me, a lot of the time, it's you got to acknowledge the anxiety. You've got to give people confidence and a bit of like security around the value that they bring right now, in a very honest and transparent way as well, right? And then the final thing is you got to give that space and that coaching to help them engage with some of these new technologies.
When you're hiring, Mark, what's the skill sets that you look for in a designer?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things here. The first thing is, you know, I look at this from like a generalist perspective. I'm a generalist, and so I've come to value that idea of somebody who has enough of the engineering nous and then enough of the product strategy side as well to be able to kind of transcend the entire stack. And be valuable from a UX perspective, from a higher level experience perspective, visual design, interaction design, those sorts of things. So for me, finding people who can really stretch is great right now because that allows you to be the glue between all of the different functions that build great product. But the other side of this tends to be more of a behavioral thing. I think there's two pieces here. Like one of them is the growth mindset. Like we're all going through the skills change right now. And so you have to be in a position where you feel really comfortable with your own skill set. And then also know the edges, like be really honest with yourself about the edges that you're great at and then not so great at. You know, you're not going to invest there. It's not a skill you're going to build out because that's the thing we can get AI to support with. And that, you know, knowing yourself is such a wonderful thing right now because it allows you to kind of augment your skill set in the right way. But I think the final thing would be around your ability to kind of take a step back and look at generally what we're trying to achieve as a business. And this is really difficult. I don't think this is an easy one at all. But right now, as businesses, we're having to move very, very quickly, oftentimes making difficult decisions about the way we scope or the way that we prioritize and focus our attention. That can be thrashy for anybody. I think it can be exceptionally thrashy for designers. And so we need to find people who have a certain amount of resilience and grit to be able to see where we're trying to track longer term and not really let that get in the way of the day to day. And I say that knowing that like we all have those moments where you're like, oh man, like why does this change every single day when I come in? Why are we changing our focus? We're seeing that, what used to be product advantage that's like 2 months, 3 months lead time on product advantage. You're like, okay, we're sorted, we're set here. Now, we can see things shipping day in and day out, and we're having to critically look at where we're investing our time. And that takes a specific type of product team member.
And I don't know about you, Mark, but I'm seeing and hearing about, junior designers being really underinvested right now. What are your thoughts around that? Do you think it's a really hard time to be starting out as a designer, or is it actually a really great one?
I think it's both. I definitely see that it's a challenging time to start out as a designer. Absolutely. Like I think what we're seeing happen at the different levels of seniority in design right now is a return towards individual contribution. So you're actually seeing your heads of design, your directors, your senior directors, your VPs get really, really hands-on again and work very closely with more senior designers to deliver impact as quickly as possible and engage with these technologies. That is happening everywhere. And I think the net effect of that is, we are seeing that it's harder for people to get into the industry. Those roles just aren't available as abundantly as they used to be. And I think people are looking at this currently with the view of, if I bring these people in, not only do I have to train them up on design, I've also got to train them up on all of these AI technologies. And I'm still learning myself. So how do I train them up on it and the time investment there? But actually, I have a very different view on all of this. And so before I rejoined Miro in February, I worked for a fantastic startup company called Hyper Exponential in London, very AI forward company. And I joined them to build out a design team there. And I followed the usual track on design teams. And I'll say this openly, I was looking for senior and staff designers to help me build out my next level of leadership bench. And I was working with a fantastic founder there. And he said to me, I want you to hire in some junior talent and start there, and we'll go from there. And I was a little bit, I was in that exact place, right? I was thinking, I'm still learning about this tech myself. How the hell am I going to deliver all of this and upskill people at the same time? But bringing in new talent was the best thing I've ever done. I brought in 3 designers and a brand designer within the space of a couple of months, all who were slightly earlier on in their career. They were solid product designers and working towards things like senior titles. And they were incredible. What I saw is a new lease of energy, because they were coming into this fresh, they didn't have that kind of baked perspective on this is what design has to do. They were coming in with engineering skill sets, or at least the technical knowledge to be able to engage with AI. And they also just didn't have all of the cultural baggage that we've built up. They weren't part of how we make design important. And so when they were in on day one and fresh, and I was like, hey, you need to work really closely with your engineering partner and figure out your ways of working. They were like, yeah, sure, fine. And it was the best design team I've ever built. And so I have a lot of faith and belief in the new people coming into the industry. They offer something very different. And I think we should all invest much, much more than we do.
Couldn't agree more. Absolutely. Now we're going to go to the quick fire round. So
okay.
I'm going to ask you a question. First thing that comes to your mind, let's go for it.
All right.
The last thing you designed yourself, not delegated.
Voice mode for Miro.
Nice.
Pretty cool.
And very cool. An AI tool you couldn't live without right now.
Claude Code, Terminal, all the way.
Most overrated design trend of the last 5 years.
AI design trend, purple gradients, sparkles.
The design feedback you give most often.
It's too complicated. Make it easier. Every single time, there's too much.
I love it. One word to describe the design industry right now.
Thrilling.
Interesting. I was going to say nuts.
Yeah.
The best piece of career advice you were ever given.
I got this one the other day from my product partner, and he'd heard this from someone else. So this comes third hand. And it is, there are many different things that you can put your all into in life. Many, many different things. If you put your all into everything, you will burn yourself out and achieve very little. What you need to do in life is figure out the things where if you put in extra effort, you will get outsized value out the other side. I love that. I'm going to carry that with me for my entire life.
Brilliant. Mark, honestly, this has been a genuinely brilliant conversation. And obviously, I'm biased, being a fellow Northerner. But I think my takeaway is in a moment when everyone is asking what AI means for design, you are 100% one of the clearest voices I've heard on why the human part of the work really matters more, not less. And for anyone listening who wants to follow Mark and the team and see what they're building at Miro, they can find you on LinkedIn, Mark. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah, best place.
Yeah. And are you going to be doing any talks or is anything coming up where people can see you live?
Not yet, but I think I'll probably be doing something a little bit later on in the year. Definitely suggest you connect with me on LinkedIn, and you can always see it there.
Fantastic. So if you've enjoyed this episode, please do subscribe, leave a review, and share with someone in your network who leads at the intersection of design and product. That's a wrap on this episode of Hire to Lead, brought to you by Zeren, part of Renovata. I'm Kim Wardle. Until next time. Thank you, Mark.